Well, hello. This is Denise Miller, your Leadership Lady Live, and we're back for week 2 of leadership advice and quotes from educators. As I told you last week, we're looking at quotes from educators because in September, it's generally back to school time for everyone. Before we get started, I have 3 questions to ask you. What would you think the 4 most important parts of excellent leadership are in terms of your personal abilities? Could your mindset be the key to unlocking your leadership potential? Another question, could choosing to serve others be your path to great leadership? And then finally, a growth mindset fosters leadership, creativity, and resilience. Do you have a growth mindset? Those are the questions that I have to begin with, and I'd like you to think about those a little bit as we take a look at the quotes. The first quote is from Carol Dweck, who is an author and a psychologist who's affiliated with Stanford University. And her quote says, "A growth mindset fosters leadership, creativity, and resilience." My question to you is, do you think that's true? What is a growth mindset to you? Do you have a growth mindset? Do you know someone who has a growth mindset? Think about those questions. What would it take for you to grow even 10% from where you are now? What would you consider that growth to be? Is it learning more? Is it knowing more? Is it experiencing different kinds of things that you're not used to? Perhaps visiting places that you've not gone, like a museum, like the Smithsonian. When I speak about museums, I think about learning museums. What would it take for you to grow even 10%? Would it be reading a book? Would it be taking a challenge and reading 10 or 20 pages a day? If you read about 20 pages a day, even if you do it 5 days a week, you'll get at least one book read every month. And that will be adding to your store of knowledge, to your growth, to your wisdom, and your ability to solve problems and tackle situations. So perhaps that growth mindset might be something that you would consider. The second quote is from Robert Greenleaf, the real OG of servant leadership. He is actually considered to be the father of servant leadership. And that quote says, "Good leaders must first become good servants." He spent 40 years working for AT&T, and then he was invited to teach at the Harvard Business School, at Dartmouth, and at the Sloan School of Management at MIT. Now, those are some very impressive credentials. But when Robert Greenleaf spoke, choosing to be a servant was something that he did not have to do. He did not have to want to be a servant, because back in those days, and I know because I was in corporate back in those days, when you were a leader, you were the top person and you didn't really have to serve people. That was the common thought. We've learned a lot more since then. So my question is to you as a leader, do you see yourself as the servant of your team? And if you do, how are you serving them? What are you doing to make their jobs easier? In fact, perhaps even to make their lives easier. If you're not doing it now, how could you serve them? It could be something as small as making sure that they have certain kinds of supplies at their desks when they arrive at work in the morning. It could be something as small as making sure that there's coffee or tea for them to drink. It could be something as small as providing a refrigerator full of water or a cooler full of water if your workers are outside. There are some very little things that we can do that go a long way in terms of serving our teams. Perhaps it's just stopping and speaking with each member of your team for about 5 minutes at some point during every week so that they feel cared about and appreciated and respected. So I'd like to ask you to think about What are some of the things that you do now to serve your team that you might not even view as service? You just do them. And what are the things that you could do to serve them even more and better? And I'd love for you to drop those things into the comments. By the way, what I'd also like you to do is, if you appreciate the material that I'm presenting today, please indicate your appreciation with a heart or a thumbs up. And please do distribute this video to other people. If you're picking it up on Facebook or LinkedIn, I would love for you to repost, and on Instagram as well. Now, the third quote, and it's about passion and perseverance, from Angela Duckworth. And it says this: grit is passion and perseverance for very long-term goals. Angela Duckworth, some years ago, wrote a book on grit. It was called The Power of Grit. You can also find her on YouTube in TED Talks speaking about grit. It's about the power of passion and perseverance. She's a neuroscientist who's a professor at the University of Pennsylvania and also a podcast host. The name of it is No Stupid Questions. As someone who was an educator myself in higher education for 17 years, I always used to say that to my students. Understand that if you have one question, there are at least 3 or 4 other people who are afraid to ask the question. So ask it, because there are no stupid questions. Back to the qualities of leadership and grit, perseverance, and passion. So what I'd like to ask you is, what are you passionate about? Where have you been persevering? Is there a long-term goal that you've been going after? I encourage you to just keep going. Don't let go. Don't stop. It's so important that you press on, to persevere, to reach your long-term goal. Trust me, I know about perseverance. I've persevered for many, many years now for several long-term goals that after 25 years, I'm just seeing come to pass. Also, remember, you must be willing to serve your team. You must be willing to do things for them that will make their lives better, that will make their work better, that will help them feel appreciated and respected. If you want to have a cohesive team, communicate with them, talk to them, listen to them. And most of all, remember that your team can't go any higher than you go. They can't produce any better than you produce. So it's important that you have a growth mindset, that you want to grow in your knowledge, in your wisdom, in your skills, in your abilities. Growth is so very important. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. And I'd also like to encourage you to consider joining the High Road Leadership Learning Circle. We're going to get together with a group of leaders to discuss some of the attributes and the qualities of people who are high road leaders for 5 weeks, starting on Tuesday, October 1st. There's a link for you to register. There are some bonuses that are also attached. This is my end of summer special. 5 weeks starting in October. So for every Tuesday in October, we'll be meeting. I look forward to joining you and to having you join me and the Leadership Learning Circle. And I look forward to your comments about this post. Have a great balance of the week. Be well. And thank you for listening. Don't forget to share. There's someone you know who I don't know who really needs to hear what I've had to say today.